Lucy Frazer, Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, representing the government this morning. Hi, it's good to see you.
Hi.
Reports suggesting that you don't care enough about kids not being in school.
We totally care about kids being in school. I care passionately about children being in school. We put record funding into education, an extra over £2 billion for the next 2 years, £1.5 billion COVID catch-up fund. I think education is the heart of what we should be doing as a government and are doing as a government to ensure that we look after, children who are our future.
Not according to this committee. They're saying the figures have hardly budged, and it's really very, very critical of the government's approach.
Well, obviously, you're looking back on COVID and the decisions that we made, really difficult decisions at the time. We learned as COVID went on in terms of, getting a vaccine, what we could or couldn't do. But as soon as we had the £1.5 billion.
Minister, it's about getting these kids back to school, and you're not doing enough, is what the report is saying.
Well, there's
COVID was then.
So I know that this was an issue that was discussed in government at the time, and what we were balancing was people's, the risk to life against other matters.
No.
Well, all these things will be obviously considered in the COVID inquiry, but absolutely the government is committed to education. I'm sure, Kay, you're going to ask me about some of the announcements that I'm making today as Culture Secretary. not in the education space, because that's not my job. I'm not Education Secretary.
You said you cared passionately about it.
I do, but I'm the Culture Secretary. So in my job, I'm trying to do what I can do in my department to look after young people. And today and throughout this week, we're going to have a series of announcements on how we can support young people, get somewhere to go, something to do, and someone to talk to. And today we're announcing our Million Hours Fund, which is about getting people in youth clubs more activities, so they get off the streets and do constructive things with their time. We're announcing bursaries for 7,500 children, disadvantaged children, children who are carers, to have outdoor adventures, and a whole series of announcements during this week, all to support young people and their life chances.
Indeed so. Lots of things for when kids are out of school. How are you going to get them back into school?
Well, that's something I know that the Education Secretary has spoken about and that she is very passionate about. And what I can tell you is that we put in £1.5 billion into that tutoring scheme to make sure that those young people got that catch-up provision so that they, were on track. And actually, the figures show that we have, in terms of academic performance, we are pretty much where we were previous to COVID.
What about these coast kids who are not at school and, are spending significant amounts of time, some of them not having been back to school since COVID, even if they were before that? And the Education Committee Chairman, who's going to be on the show very shortly, is going to tell us that the figures are suggesting the government is not doing enough. It's very critical of you.
It's really important that children are educated in school, and we've put in significant funds to do that. As I said, I'm not the Education Secretary, who I know will have lots of plans on that, but even in my department, that's exactly what we are doing. So later in the week, we'll be announcing, a plan for more mentoring, so £15 million going into mentoring. That's exactly the sort of support that children who are not in school would benefit from. And we're also later announcing as well work experience for children.
OK, fine. OK, we've only got a limited time, Minister. You're not the Home Secretary either, but I'm sure you've got a view on immigration. The debate needs to be had on what should happen as far as the movement of people is concerned. A major rethink about the 1951 Convention is what the Home Secretary was saying to us yesterday. Will the government commit to staying within the UN Refugee Convention?
Well, you talked about the Home Secretary, and she did obviously give a speech yesterday. And what she was saying was that this is uncontrolled illegal immigration is an international problem. It's a global problem that needs global solutions. And you will know that as a government, we're absolutely committed to that. I've already taken steps to do that. So, for example, you will know we've got a historic agreement with France that's stopping people illegally coming over here. You'll know that we've got an agreement, a bilateral agreement with Albania. And as a result of all those measures, those small boat crossings are down 23% as of this time last year.
And in answer to my question?
So what she was talking about was the fact that International agreements are really important. They're part of the bedrock of our international cooperation. But what the Home Secretary was talking about was the fact that when that UN convention in 1951 was formed, it was all about persecution, and immigration was nowhere near the levels that it is today. And what she was talking about was that case law has interpreted the 1951 convention through a much looser definition. And now what we're getting is economic migrants coming here, as well as those who are suffering persecution. And she was saying that is something that we should be thinking about internationally. And I do think that we need international solutions to these issues.
Okay, and an answer to my question.
I think I did answer your question.
No, you didn't.
I think you asked me whether the UN Convention needed looking at.
No, I didn't. I didn't say that.
I'm sorry, if I misunderstood your question.
Oh, well, I'll ask you again. Will the government commit to staying in the UN Refugee Convention, which is what I asked you?
Yes, well, I think that those conventions are really important, but I do think that it is, what she was talking about is whether those sorts of conventions should be reformed. And I do think that it is up to all countries to look at whether conventions that were signed a number of years ago are still, as they're interpreted today, whether they're still doing the job that they were enacted to do.
If gay people are being persecuted in their country and fear for their life, should they be allowed to find safe refuge in the UK?
This comes back to the question that you've just asked me about what is the purpose of the 1951 Convention. And when it was first enacted, it was about people who were fearing for their life.
If a gay person is fearing for their life, should they be allowed to find refuge in the UK?
So if someone is fearing, if someone is at a threat of losing their life and is at risk of persecution and being killed, then of course they should be seeking refuge. If they are fearing discrimination, that is different.
Persecution?
I think this is very clear that if someone is being persecuted in terms of they're going to lose their life, then that is what the convention was there for. She was distinguishing between discrimination and fear of discrimination and fearing for your life in terms of persecution.
Okay, so somebody from Rwanda could come to the UK and seek refuge here?
I think you will find that the UK believes that Rwanda is a safe country. That is why we've entered into an agreement.
But gay people feel they're being persecuted in Rwanda?
Well, I hope I've been really clear.
Well, you haven't, which is why I'm asking you the question.
That there is a difference. So people, all my great-grandparents, all my grandparents came here fleeing persecution, i.e. they were going to be killed. One came from Nazi Germany, some came from Russia, and they came here and Britain gave them a home. And I'm very proud of that because, we gave people who were otherwise going to be exterminated a home. And there's a difference between that and allowing everybody who fears discrimination across the world, which is hundreds of millions of people.
You're being very emotive. I didn't say that at all. What I said was if somebody is being persecuted or fear of persecution, and whatever that might mean, in a country like Rwanda, should they be allowed to come to a safe haven that is the UK?
Well, you're taking a particular country, which is Rwanda.
I am.
Which, as you know, we believe is a safe country. That is a matter before the courts.
What if you're gay?
That is a matter before the courts at the moment, and we believe that we are complying with those UN and international conventions in asking Rwanda to take those people who are coming illegally here.
Okay. Final question. How closely will the Prime Minister be listening to what the 5 Labour mayors are saying today? They say failure to deliver HS2 will leave swathes of the north with Victorian transport infrastructure that is unfit for purpose.
I'm sure the Prime Minister and the Chancellor listened to a wide variety of voices, but as you will know, it's the responsibility of the government to keep all projects under consideration. And that's what the Chancellor is doing. He is, as he does on all matters which are spending billions of pounds of taxpayers' funding, is looking at a whole range of projects to make sure that they're value for money.
Is HS2 going to go ahead all the way to Manchester?
Well, that is a decision, as you know, for the Chancellor and not for me.
I seem to know a lot more than you this morning, Minister. You keep telling me how much I know. It's good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.